Hello everyone, Danny Boy EDH here with another Commander Deck Tech video. Today we're talking about Radha, Heart of Keld. Shout out to Gavin who requested a Lands Matter deck. This is my Gruul lands. Let's take a look at Radha. She's a 3-mana 3/3 with first strike on your turn. You may look at the top of your library anytime, and you may play the top card of your library if it's a land. And you can pay 6 mana to give her +X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. So as you can imagine, we are looking to play a bunch of lands and make her pretty huge and swing in for some serious commander damage, along with other lands shenanigans along the way. So let's take a look at it here. We got our creatures first. We got Dragon Master Outcast, who will give you a 5/5 dragon on your upkeep if you have 6 or more lands. Lotus Cobra will give you 1 mana of any color whenever a land enters under your control. And Tangled Florahedron is a new card from Zendikar. It can enter as a mana dork or a tapped land, depending on what the circumstances require. Tillinali Summoner, whenever it attacks, you may pay X and a red. If you do, create X 1/1 elementals that are tapped and attacking. If you have the City's Blessing, they are not exiled at the end of the turn. Tireless Tracker gives you a clue whenever lands enter, so you can draw some cards and make him pretty big. Azusa Lost But Seeking for 2 additional land drops. We've got Wayward Swordtooth and Dryad of the Elysian Grove, also for extra land drops. The Dryad will also fix your mana as well. Ramunap Excavator will allow you to play lands from your graveyard. Reclamation Sage and Thrashing Brontodon will take care of your opponent's artifacts or enchantments. And Kenra Charioteer can give your creatures trample. I wish Radha's activated ability gave her trample too. That's one thing that I feel like the commander is missing, is the ability to get trample in there. But we do have a few ways, such as Mina and Den, to provide trample. Mina and Den also allow an extra land drop, and you can pay Gruul and return a land to your hand to give a creature trample until end of turn. Grand Warlord Radha has haste, and whenever 1 or more creatures attack, add that much mana in any combination of red or green. Until end of turn, they do not empty from your mana pool. World Shaper allows you to drop 3 cards into your graveyard from your library on attacks, and when it dies, you can return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That's particularly good if you have scape shifted. Ember Swallower and Polis Crusher, both monstrosity creatures. When Ember Swallower becomes monstrous, each player sacks 3 lands. That's good because we can usually play lands from our graveyard, and we typically have more lands than our opponents. Polis Crusher, when it becomes monstrous and deals combat damage to a player, you can destroy target enchantment that player controls. It also has trample and protection from enchantments built in. Embodiment of Fury, and we also have Embodiment of Insight. On land drops, they will turn a land you control into a 3/3 with haste, and the Embodiment of Insight gives vigilance, and Embodiment of Fury gives them trample. Savage Ventmaw, that will give you 6 mana whenever it attacks. So if it's swinging in with Radha, that gives you enough mana right there to pump her right away, or use however you like. Spite Bellows is a 6 mana 6/1 that can also be evoked for 3 mana. When it leaves play, it deals 6 damage to target creature. So you can use it as basically a 3 mana kill spell or a 6 mana creature that is willing to trade, because usually you can kill 2 of your opponent's creatures. Bane of Progress will destroy all artifacts and enchantments when it enters the battlefield, and it gets a +1/+1 counter for each permanent destroyed this way. That does take out your own stuff, so just be careful when you use that, but sometimes it's worth it to wipe the board. Morag, Fury of Akum is a new card from Zendikar Rising. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it attacked this turn. And its landfall trigger is pretty disgusting. If it's your main phase, take an extra combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. That can obviously get out of hand, especially if you're playing something as simple as a Terramorphic Expanse. That will give you two extra combats if you are cracking a fetch land like that. Omnath, Locus of Rage, was a former commander of this deck. He gives you a 5/5 elemental whenever a land enters, and whenever he or another elemental dies, you can do 3 damage to target creature or player. There is a little bit of an elemental sub-theme to this deck if you haven't noticed yet. Verdant Force and Magmatic Force, they have nice upkeep triggers. Create a 1/1 Saproling on each upkeep, and Magmatic Force 3 damage to any target on each upkeep. Apocalypse Hydra enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, so if you cast it for 7 mana, you get a 10/10, and you can ping stuff by removing counters. A couple more elementals that would be good in this deck. Avenger of Zendikar and Ancient Green Warden. I'll definitely be buying an Ancient Green Warden once that rotates out of Standard. Hopefully the price will go down a little. Onto the Planeswalkers here. We got Domri, Anarch of Bolas, gives our creatures +1/+0. And we can plus him up to give a red or green mana, and our creature spells can't be countered this turn. He can also allow one of our creatures to fight another creature. Nissa Vital Force. Usually gonna try and plus this up to turn one of our lands into a 5/5 until our next turn. And then on the next turn, we will -6 to get her emblem. Whenever a land enters, draw a card. Nissa, Who Shakes the World. She will double our mana output of our forests. She can also turn our lands into elemental creatures. And we can get an emblem with lands are indestructible on our side and search for any number of forests and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Onto enchantments, we got Exploration, which is our dream turn 1 play. I think this is probably my only deck that doesn't have a Soul Ring in it, so yeah, we would go turn 1 Exploration in a perfect world. Rancor to give Radha trample, and it can also be played again because when the enchanted creature dies, it will go back to your hand. Hammer of Perforos gives our creatures haste, and we can pay 3, tap it, sack a land to put a 3/3 golem onto the battlefield, which will obviously have haste, and we can be playing those lands again from our graveyard, so that's just pretty good value. Into the Wilds can cheat a land into play on upkeep. Epic Proportions gives Radha +5/+5 and trample for the same cost of her activation, except it will obviously stick around longer. Zendikar Resurgent will also double our mana output from our lands and will draw us cards when we cast creature spells. Spawning Grounds can enchant a land to tap and put a 5/5 beast with trample onto the battlefield. Swiftfoot Boots, Prowler's Helm, and Sword of the Animist. We're getting into artifacts now. Hexproof and Haste are pretty good on Radha. Same thing with Prowler's Helm. If she can't be blocked, you're going to love activating that ability. And Sword of the Animist is good on any of our creatures because it will give us landfall triggers and ramp us. We've got Thaumatic Compass, which can search for a basic to put into our hand, and at the beginning of the end step it transforms into a Maze of Ith that can target only our opponent's creatures, but it can also tap for colorless mana. Crucible of Worlds will allow us to play lands from our graveyard. Instants and sorceries here. We got Lightning Bolt and Searing Blaze for some creature removal or player damage. Life from the Loam will return up to 3 target lands. from our graveyard to our hand, and we can also dredge it back to our hand. Return to Nature and Destructive Revelry for artifact and enchantment removal. Heroic Intervention to give our permanents hexproof and indestructible. Unleash Fury and Wild Hunger can make Radha a big problem, or any of our other creatures really. We've got Cultivate and Kodama's Reach to ramp us, and then we've got some of the big ones here. These are potential game enders. Scape Shift, sack any number of lands, search your library for that many lands of any type, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So that can be big time landfall triggers. If you have Omnath on the field, Bonfire of the Damned and Earthquake. Basically late game, if you have enough mana, you can blow up one or more players and some creatures as well. Earthquake will obviously take out all creatures, including your own, that don't have flying. And then last but not least, we have Genesis Wave, another potential game ender. If you have something like Omnath out there. Yeah, and it can also cheat in permanent cards with CMC X or less when you cast it. So that is basically the deck. It's pretty fun to play. It's not as competitive as some other land decks like Gitrog Monster, obviously, but I still like to play it. Wooded Foothills, Terramorphic Expanse, and Evolving Wilds can give us multiple landfall triggers. Spire Garden, Stomping Ground, Rootbound Crag, all potentially entering untapped. We got some tap lands here for a Scry, a Gain, or cycling. We've got some more cycling lands, which ideally we could play from our graveyard afterward. Ramunap Ruins and Hashep Oasis can also be played from the graveyard if we are activating their bottom abilities to deal 2 damage to each opponent or give a creature +3/+3. We got Strip Mine, Encroaching Wastes. Wasteland would be good in here as well, because we can destroy our opponent's lands and then play them back from the graveyard. Cryptic Caves can draw us a card if we have 5 or more lands. We have to sack it, but again, can always play it from the graveyard. Hostile Desert and Crawling Barrens can become creatures. Crawling Barrens also keeps the counters on it, so that can get pretty big. Blast Zone can remove opponent. Oh well, it'll be all permanents with a certain CMC, whatever we don't like. Rogue's Passage to give Radha unblockable. Ghost Town to replay for extra landfall triggers. Maze of Ith for some protection. And also Glacial Chasm for protection. It does have a cumulative upkeep cost of 2 life, so first turn after you play it's 2 life, then 4, then 6. But it will prevent all damage that is dealt to us. However, you can't attack, so ideally you choose not to pay the 2 life on upkeep. It goes to your graveyard. You can attack on your turn, and then after that you play it from your graveyard in your main phase 2, and your opponents can't deal any damage to you. It doesn't get around loss of life, but it's a nice little effect to keep you safe for a while, hopefully. And then we've got 14 basic forests and 6 basic mountains. That's a total of 43 lands in the deck. I think it's a pretty good balance. It's nice that Radha can look at the top of your library, because you can kind of cycle through, and you always get to know what's coming in the next turn, even if you can't play it. So let me know what you think of the deck in the comments below. Let me know if I'm missing any cards. I know I'm definitely missing the few I mentioned, and Oracle of Moldiah would be good in there as well. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.